Yeah, hello. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm a little late. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Hello, Silent Shizu, Bin Octopus, Didi Daniels, Crisp, Alisu, Christina Starlight, and everybody else. Welcome to Destiny 2. Please buy ice. Let me see. How do I how do I turn off the automatic translation? Customization, live chat. There you go. How are you guys? Hello, Wejock. Hello, Bacon. Good morning. So, shall we get started and watch the Nakai the Croco? Hello. Shall we get started and watch the video? Hold on. Playing Shadowkeep right now. Okay. Boop, 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 boop. We're finally going to the start of the actual game. Awakening.
Our journey began, as journeys do for
Dingle
guardians,
Bite!
in darkness, until light. Not some great and glorious thing filled with triumph and fanfare, but a slow and steady thing, like the rousing of a great hero after a long and well-earned slumber. We awoke
Ah,
to the
graphics
sights
are
of
so
old
nice.
Russia and the voice of our ghost. And we realized that we knew nothing of our past. When one of the worthy dead is chosen by a ghost and risen as a guardian of the light, they remember nothing of their past lives. Some might get lucky, and they might have an object from their person that identifies who they were. It could be as simple as a name badge. It could be something as extensive as a journal for those who are lucky enough. But most of the time, guardians are risen with no idea of who they were, and no connection to their past lives. So it was for us. We would have no conception of who we were and what we had done, or why we were in old Russia. But it didn't matter. The Cosmodrome at Baikonur was a dangerous hunting ground, and immediately we were being pursued by a squadron of fallen raiders. Our ghost would search through the wreckage and ruins until they found what they were looking for. Us. But they were now not the only ones taking the risk. We needed to escape, and so narrowly evading the fallen House of Devils, we found our way into the wall and found an old jump ship. It had not been operated in hundreds of years perhaps. It was rusty and in need of repair, but it would be enough to get us to the place we needed to go. It would take us to the place we would one day call home, the last city. From atop the wall, we took our first steps into the tower, and we saw that we were surrounded by a company of many heroes. Maybe it was here that we quietly made a choice to do good and to fight for these people. People we didn't know yet, people we had only just realized existed in this strange world on the brink of collapse again. If we made this decision in this moment, that was perhaps our first true unspoken act of heroism. But it would not be our last.
The speaker.
After speaking with the Vanguard and listening to the speaker, we knew our purpose. As a guardian of the light, we were bound to defend our home and our people.
That's how he
all of
looks.
Saul should fall into ruin. The speaker warned us of an imminent threat, that the darkness was coming back, and that we would not survive it this time. We would need to push back the darkness, alongside with guardians on Earth and beyond. We would not know the face of this evil for some time, and the speaker would die before he learned the truth. But we would ride out to face this evil nonetheless. And so we went forth. We first returned to the Cosmodrome, where we acquired a jump drive for our ship from a fallen Archon who had initially pursued us alongside the scouting team that found us. His name was Rixis, and with his defeat, the House of Devils had suffered its first major blow at our hands. We would also go on to defeat the High Servitor of the House of Devils, Sepix Prime. Across the Cosmodrome, we first encountered the Hive and their wizards who came from the moon. But it was our discovery of Rasputin's remaining systems that would be most valuable. Through both fallen meddling and the reactivation of an ancient communications array that we had discovered in a portion of the old Warmind bunker system within Old Russia, the portion of Rasputin would be sent out to the rest of the system, a portion that one day would be reunited with the whole. The Hive's presence was worth investigating further, and so we followed their trail to the place that Guardians had long feared, to Luna. Touching down on the surface of the moon, we were able to follow the signal of a Guardian who had ventured here. We followed their trail until we discovered a massive pair of doors and a looming Hive structure. Before these doors, the Guardian was found, and they were dead. Not even the light remained. Before the doors of this temple to Oryx's son Crota, we saw what was left of them, and briefly turned around. There we saw our first glimpse of a stranger off in the distance watching us from beyond. But we had but moments to observe this. The door in front of us began to unseal. Inside, the Hive would face us, and we would discover the Guardian's ghost. This would also be the point at which we discovered the extent of the Hive's presence on the moon. For centuries, they had been building up their forces and had been waiting to launch a full-scale invasion of Earth. We delved deeper into the Hive's
This place grossed me out as
stealing from the world's grave, the archive of the Hive, and defeating the abominations that they raised in their summoning pits. We shattered the remnants of Crota's sword to the darkest edge, and defeated a warden of Oryx's shrine on the moon. The deepest parts of this infestation were remarkable, but the true malice of the Hive was unknown to us until the speaker contacted us out of the blue. He stated that the Hive were engaged in a ritual to drain the Traveler of its light, and so we rushed back to the Temple of Crota, where we had first descended into the Hellmouth. In that moment, we were contacted yet again by that mysterious stranger on the ridge. She sent us coordinates to a region of Venus known as the Ishtar Sink, which we would soon investigate. And she promised us that if we were to defeat the Hive, there were greater threats still to the system out there. We returned to our mission and descended into the Hive ritual chamber. There we discovered what the Hive were experimenting on, a shard of the Traveler itself. It was unclear how they were able to use this to manipulate the Traveler and to drain its light, but it did point to the idea that all shards of the Traveler are somehow linked to it. After successfully freeing the shard of the Traveler, we went on our mission to Venus, emboldened by our successes. We found ourselves cutting through the overgrown ruins of the Ishtar Academy. It was here that we first encountered another foe, the Vex. The time-traveling machines of unknown origin, filled with millions of radiolaria. After defeating them, we met the Exo-Stranger at last. To cut a long story shorter than was necessary, she informed us that the Traveler would not truly heal until we found the legendary Black Garden's heart and ripped it out. Our ghost prompted us
Black Garden's heart. What was that again?
Could only be found with the Awoken. They were the only ones who knew about the location of the Black Garden. In possibly the most frustrating of turns, the Exo-Stranger had little more to say to us. After all,
she didn't have time to explain.
Explain why she didn't have time to explain. But we at least had a heading,
I remember that.
and as she disappeared into nothingness, we resolved to go to the Black Garden. But first we would need to pay the Awoken a visit, and so we went out to the territory of the reef and were quickly picked up by the Awoken patrols. In our initial somewhat frosty reception with Prince Aldrin and Queen Mara, we were told that if we recovered the Eye of a Vex Gate Lord, they would forge us a key into the Black Garden. Despite Aldrin's insistence that this was a fool's errand, we began our search and returned to Venus. Along with discovering a Golden Age Ishtar Collective lab and defeating the Kell of the Fallen House of Winter, we were able to pinpoint a location where we would find a Vex Gate Lord.
Vex
A place
Gate
called
Lord.
the Endless Steps. As we ventured there, we had to battle through many Vex frames to reach our target, Zydron. But even this powerful Vex Gate Lord, an Axis mind in control of all the local Vex, was not enough to stop us. We struck it down and took what remained of it to the Queen. Aldrin begrudgingly obliged and ripped out the relevant components from the Eye of the Vex Gate Lord. Unfortunately, the component was broken and would need to be charged in order to allow us ingress into the Black Garden. Aldrin gave us our less than functional prize, and at Mara's request informed us that an entrance to the Black Garden could be found near Meridian Bay on Mars. The Queen also demanded that we would one day return to repay her generosity. She had shown us mercy given that we had barged into her kingdom, and she would allow us to leave, assuming that we returned when the time was right. But that would have to wait until another day. The Martian sands were calling our name. Meridian Bay was a heavily contested zone when we arrived, filled with Cabal forces from the 5 scouting legions that had invaded Sol. Pushing through them, we first laid eyes on the gate to the Black Garden, in a place called the Valley of the Kings. Now all we needed to do was
I don't remember.
fix the Gate Lord's eye. As we explored Mars for a way to do this, we carved deep into Vex territory, shutting down many of their portals that allowed them to exit from the Black Garden in great numbers. We also had to contend with the Cabal forces there, and dealt many serious blows to them, including taking out 3 of their Scion Flayers, and even defeating the infamous Valus Ta'ark, who was stationed on the Cabal land tank of the Cerberus Vey 3. Alongside these great defeats, we also discovered something remarkable. We found Rasputin again, the same fragment of him that we had aided in the Cosmodrome. He was here as well within the Warmind systems of Meridian Bay. He was starting to regrow in terms of strength. Soon, perhaps, he would be ready to fight once more. Eventually, though, our ghost would discover our true objective, a means of charging the Gate Lord's eye. A massive Vex spire deep in Cabal territory would be our in. This particular firebase, where the spire was located, was controlled by elite Vex clearing units of the Cabal Blind Legion, and their Primus didn't take kindly to his territory being invaded, but we managed to defeat him and successfully interfaced the Gate Lord's eye with the spire. All that remained was to return to the Valley of the Kings and enter the Black Garden itself. As we approached the gate, Vex poured forth and the gateway reacted to us. We defeated them and crossed over. We found ourselves in a strange place, a world of stone and brass and moss. Ancient Vex frames stood here, motionless, covered in the growth of the garden. These were the sole divisive, the Vex that lay within the Black Garden itself. They had seen the divinity planted here by the Witness not long ago, and had sought to bind themselves to it for their own survival. That divinity would be what we faced at the Black Garden's heart. Unbeknownst to us at the time, this roiling, formless mass of darkness was a copy of the Veil, a flawed copy that had begun to poison the traveler with its imperfection. As we stepped forth, we saw the Vex frames doing as they did within the presence of this unknown divinity. They had decided that the greatest means by which they could survive was worship, and so they had reverently decided to enact the behavior of worship, bowing eternally to this new, fetid thing. We saw the Vex frames leaving this state of worship and reacting to us, and in their adoration, Some of them were empowered by darkness.
Whoa.
3 great Vex Axis mines known as the Soul Progeny were calcified into statues before this black heart, each of them representing the past, present, or future. They would all come to life one at a time, empowered by the Black Garden's heart. But with its power attached to each of these Vex, the heart was weakened each time we struck one down. And when the last mind fell, the heart began to collapse in on itself, in a great torrent of cascading energy. As the light from this moment overwhelmed our senses and blinded our eyes, the heart was destroyed. The destruction of the heart of the Black Garden would send echoes out across the universe, and would set in motion everything that followed. The Traveler's light would begin to return, and slowly it would start to heal itself at last. As we returned to the city to celebrate our success, we were greeted one last time by the Exo-Stranger. She gave us her weapon and reminded us that there were more foes that we would soon need to confront. Her words and whispers would send us forth, and we would pursue the rumors of the dark power that the Vex had sought to unleash from the Black Garden. That trail would lead us to the most infamous Vault of Glass. The fire team that had tried to raid the vault before us was lost mostly to time. Little is known of the exact details of the assault of Pahanin, Pradith, and Kabir, but we do know that their ill-fated attempt to destroy the Hazen Lords was unsuccessful. What we found within the vault was the remains of Kabir, the Aegis, the last vestige of his light, and we would put it to great use, using it to break the unbreakable within the vault. To assault this great stronghold, though, we would need to face Vex with true control over time itself. The power of these Vex was ontological in nature. They would be able to cut the threads of the timelines themselves here within the vault, a unique power vested in this place alone. To put it simply, if you were removed from the timeline here, it would be as if you never existed at all. To fail was not simply to die, it was to never have been in the first place. We faced down their great constructs, including the Templar, the Gorgons, and the greatest of them all, Atheon, Time's Conflux.
Man, the Vex really...
Vex would undo their control of the vault, and leave it as an empty shell of what was. Our first great conquests were complete, but many more battles awaited us. The resurgence of the light had drawn the attention of others, of those that lay on the moon, of those with envious eyes and hungry, slathering jaws.
The dark below.
Even as we had struck down the heart of the Black Garden and attained our first great victory, our actions on the moon had aroused a slumbering giant. Crota, the son of Oryx, had seen the return of the light's power, and would begin to marshal his forces on the moon and on Earth. This would be the prelude to what would be an invasion well over a century in the making. All of the forces that we had discovered on the moon would soon be sent onward to invade Earth, and to destroy the last city. But a remnant of Crota's past persisted still, a remnant that would be the bane of him and all of his kin. For long ago, 6 of them went down into the pit, and now, ragged and scarred, but enlightened and determined, one would crawl out. Eris Morn, the last. She would quickly find a vessel and make her way back to the last city, but her return was not the happy reunion that some might have hoped for. Her time in the Hellmouth had left her changed, and having lost her sight long ago and having had to replace it with the eyes of an acolyte, she was seen as a terrible abomination, a thing of darkness. Her ghost Briar was gone, her connection to the light was severed, and now she wept an eternal veil of shadows, like blood drifting through droplets of rain. The Speaker and Commander Zavala wanted to immediately exile her, but Eris had been a member of Ikura Ray's organization known as the Hidden, the great order of spies and scouts that Ikora used to keep tabs on the system at large. At her request, Eris Morn was allowed to remain. Eris immediately sought us out and told us of the coming invasion of Crota. To counter it, we headed to the Cosmodrome first. Crota's disciples were making their landings there, and so we needed to blunt the offensive before it could truly begin. We went to kill Sardon, the Fist of Crota, and to prevent Omnigul, Crota's will, from corrupting the systems of the Warmind Rasputin that were found within old Russia. The Seraphim bunkers beneath the surface were held, and the Hive were not able to use the Warmind's weapons against us. Rebuking these assaults would leave Crota's immediate invasion plan halted. It broke the tip of his spear. Seizing on this momentum, we would return to the moon, and defeated the son of Oryx for the first time.
First time?
We would discover Crota initially in the darkest ritual chamber of the Hellmouth, the Chamber of Night. But we would not face Crota as he had been in the Great Disaster. We would face a weakened fragment of his power. Long ago, a Hive Knight of Xivu Arath had clashed with another knight bearing tribute for Crota's father, Oryx, and, by extension, as part of that chain, Crota himself. Both knights died, and their tithes never reached their overlords. In the case of Crota, who would have tithed this knight's portion to Oryx, it meant that he believed he needed to retreat, to regain his power in this crystalline form, so that he could safely be manifested again when he was stronger. Trapped within this crystalline matrix, and unable to take true physical form without the intervention of his brood, Crota was vulnerable. And despite his still overwhelming power, we proved more than a match for him, and shattered his crystal, banishing him from this mortal plane. His initial assaults on the moon might have been stopped, but as one of the Ascendant Hive, as the son of Oryx no less, Crota was uniquely positioned to survive death. He would only truly die if he was destroyed within his own throne world. Thanks to the teachings of Toland the Shattered, Eris Morn knew this, and she asked us to assemble a team to do what she had tried many years ago, to do what the others had failed to end Crota once and for all, and to secure vengeance for Wei Ning, Eriana III, Sai Motar, Omuragar, Veltalo, and Toland the Shattered. Once again, 6 of us went down into the pit. And this time, we would not crawl out. We would go deeper.
Okay.
We fell at the heart of the Hellmouth. We fell into the stills, where Eriana and Toland had once seen the light of Crota's Netherrealm for themselves. We battled through Crota's seemingly endless hordes to reach the keyhole, the gateway that led into the Netherrealm of the Son of Oryx. On the other side, we were greeted with a green flame sky beneath the Oversoul throne, and we would face Crota, the Son of Oryx, one last time.
Damn, he's
Though
huge.
his might was remarkable and his strength was boundless, we fought the Hive God with strength that he himself would muster, with the logic of the sword, the immutable rule of the universe that the Hive had learned so long ago, that only the strong shall live, and that the weak will die. And what's more,
hello, Astra.
We would triumph. We took Crota's own sword, the Darkest Edge, and plunged it into the Son of Oryx's heart. In his final desperate moments, as his cries rang out across the night, the sea of screams shivered. When Crota's cry was ended, silence. But something out in the night had heard him. Soon it would be upon us. But till that moment arrived, we would believe this to be our greatest victory. And the vengeance that would soon stalk us from across the stars would not arrive in the system for at least a few months more. And in this time there were other concerns for us to deal with. We were called back to the Black Garden to deal with a new Vex Axis mind called the Undying Mind.
Oh yeah, we gotta reuse the world.
To return the heart of the Black Garden to life. Needless to say, we could not stand for such a thing, and so we shut it down for good. But the echoes of this mysterious construct would still persist in the infinite weave of time that was the Black Garden. Just like the other soul-divisive Vex, these Vex would bide their time until an opportunity presented itself once more. And back in the system, there were other forces on the move. Strange happenings were occurring out in the asteroid belt, and soon the Queen would call on us for that favor we owed her.
Was this expansion? Was it the take
It is not a
Queen? No,
common
it's not.
thing for the Awoken of the Reef to seek out assistance. It is even rarer for them to seek it out from the likes of Guardians. And yet, Marasov had seen how we had dispatched
Big
with
one's
the
the next
son of
one.
Oryx.
I see.
And so we had at least proven our competence in battle. And that competence was needed. Skolas, the Kell of the House of Wolves, whom Mara had defeated in the Reef Wars, had broken out of the Prison of Elders. The exact details of this breakout aren't known, but it appears to be with the assistance of the Nine. Why they did this is something of a mystery, but what we do know is that they gifted Skolas with a Ketch, one of the great fallen warships. With this, he had an opportunity to call his forces back to his side. Many Corsairs of the Awoken would die in the ensuing chaos, and a few infamous fallen wolves that would come to be known as the Queenbreakers even attempted an assassination on Marasov herself.
Damn.
Corsairs died in her defense there, and her fury was palpable. As the traitors turned tail and fled, Mara tasked us and her recently appointed Queen's Wrath, Petravenge, with hunting down Skolas and all the treacherous wolves. We would also be assisted by Varix the Loyal, the same scribe of House Judgment who had originally betrayed Skolas. We quickly discovered that his fallen wolves were converging on the Simic Fell, the Ketch on Venus that had once housed the leadership of the House of Winter, namely the Winter's Kell, Draxis. We briefly interrupted Skolas, making a proclamation before the crew of this Ketch. Varix translated this, and as it turned out, Skolas was proclaiming himself to be an Elixni legend, the so-called Kell of Kells, who would unite all the Elixni houses, have all servitors and Ketches bent to him, and even receive the blessing of the Traveler itself.
Wow.
Before we could defeat Skolas and put an end to such delusions of grandeur, he escaped, and had succeeded in rallying what remained of the House of Winter. Our first mission was a failure, but we didn't let that stop us. Quickly we managed to pick up his trail again, and we would head to Earth in order to cut Skolas off. He was heading there to try and integrate the forces of the House of Devils and House of Kings into his growing armies, using either force or diplomacy, but our arrival in both cases scuppered all of Skolas' plans before they could even bear fruit. With pressure being put upon the Wolfkel, and with no other houses to turn to in the system of significant enough power, Skolas looked for other means of conquering his foe, and his madness could be seen here. He desperately sought out an advantage from the Vex. He made a small raid into the now weakened Vault of Glass, and successfully tapped into some of the Vex technology there, a testament to his madness and the skill of his splicers, who even deployed a few weakened oracles to try and wipe us from existence. With the danger Skolas presented rising, it was becoming incredibly important for us to capture him with all haste. His forces were raiding more Vex installations, including the ominous Citadel on Venus, the massive Vex spire that pierced towards the sky. They were hoping to use its technology for their advantage. Unfortunately for Skolas, his movement to the top of the Citadel had left him cornered. We ascended to the top of the spire, at the very height of the Citadel, and there we battled with the Kell of Wolves. Even as he used Vex technology to pull his house through time, Skolas was outmatched. and fell before us.
Okay.
He was captured by Marasov and Petrovenge, and he was promptly returned to the prison of elders. The Wolfkel would stand trial, but not before being interrogated by Varix and Mara. Skolas told them in a moment of fear that despite the malice they had dealt to him, there was an even greater force headed this way, a dark and looming shadow that would crush all with its presence. Later, Mara would prophetically dream of this foe. She saw what was to come, and knew that it could spell her doom and the doom of the whole system. Many envoys went back and forth from the reef in those days. In particular, Eris Morn, Osiris, and Marasov would all meet, convening to discuss the threat that they would soon encounter. But more than simply this, the three would discuss the nature of the ultimate enemy that they would need to confront, lest they should witness its wrath for themselves.
Wrath?
And thus, a plan of loose cooperation was devised between the three of them, and a plan to address Oryx was formed. It would be a plan of many steps and phases, one that would evolve and shape its foundations over time, but it would first be set into motion months later by Marasov's choices over the rings of Saturn, and its consequences would echo across the Ascendant realms forever. But before such plans could be enacted, there was one last complication to deal with. Skolas was still alive. Given what approached on the horizon, the reef could ill afford a second breakout. And so, in the ways of old of the Elixni, the Wolfkel was sentenced to trial by combat. We would be his chosen executioners, and so we entered the prison of elders and fought the hordes of Skolas's minions who had been imprisoned there. The Wolfkel was fierce, and did everything in his power to destroy us. But we had already destroyed gods in our short time as guardians, even with his many tricks and his minions being flung at us left, right, and center. This pretender prophet, this so-called Kel of Kells, was nothing more than a charlatan. He was no match for our light. Skolas the Rabbit would be vanquished.
Fripp.
The Wolfkel was no more. For a short time, things seemed calm across the system, and we reinforced, preparing for our next battle. Little did we know that what we would soon be engulfed in was no battle, but a war. A war against one of the greatest champions of the darkness that the system had known since the collapse. For only recently we had slain Crota, and his death rattle had echoed out across the night. And now, the night would answer. It started with a presence, a movement of unknown vessels that were quickly identified by the Awoken. Crota's father had heard his cries, and despite the teachings of the sword logic, Oryx would seek revenge for the death of his son. He had brought his armada, he had brought his brood. Worst of all, he had brought his dreadnought. It was the Awoken who would encounter him first. Marasov marshaled her fleets and the many ketches under her command. She met the king out in the edges of the system, and at the rings of Saturn, the two monarchs did battle. As the fleets engaged, the combat at first seemed even, until Mara unleashed her harbingers like she had done in the Reef Wars. These ancient anomalous creatures brought with them the same devastating force of gravity that they had before, and Oryx's fleet was crushed between the debris of Saturn's rings. The harbingers slammed into Oryx's dreadnought, leaving the rest of the Hive fleet in disarray. But the dreadnought still stood, unblemished. Now it was Oryx's turn to unleash his own force. Using the dreadnought's mighty weapon, Oryx projected his own throne world into real space. Mara's fleet was crushed. She was taken, the Techians were taken, and as they attempted to flee into the dreaming city, Oryx's corruption spread forth across the system and through the gap that they had tried to use to escape.
Oh, passage.
Oryx's echoes would spread out across the system and found their way into many places of power. They took Hazen Vex within the Vault of Glass. They took powerful covens of witches on Earth. There were fleeting steps made by these echoes into the resurfaced Black Garden, and they even ventured into the Dreaming City, where through one of his echoes, Oryx would speak to Riven of 1,000 Voices, the last known Ahamkara. After a brief bargain of sorts, the Wish Dragon herself was taken as well. Thus, Oryx proclaimed his
Damn, he
arrival in
looks pretty
Sol.
fucking cool.
Thus ended the Battle of Saturn. Thus began the Taken War. We would first learn of it
He looks
when we saw
fucking
massive
badass.
Cabal fleet movements from the Skyburner's base on Phobos. We went to investigate and discovered that this was not the Cabal forces marshalling. It was an evacuation. It didn't take long for us to discover the Taken for ourselves, and we barely escaped before being overrun. The Vanguard quickly convened to analyze the threat, and thanks to Eris, they too would learn of Oryx. Being one for decisive action, Cade had a plan, one which he immediately contacted us to enact. We went to one of Cade's old stashes in old Russia to recover ancient stealth drive technology stolen from Rasputin. Even here on Earth,
Nice.
the
Stolen
Taken were
from
starting to make
Rasputin.
their appearances. It was here that we faced our first echo of the Taken King himself. After recovering the drive, we took it to Cade, who installed it on Eris Morn's ship. Eris wouldn't fly the vessel herself, that honor would be ours to undertake. But the vessel was ideal for this mission. With the stealth drive installed and with it still covered in Hive detritus, it stood the best chance of masking itself from Hive detection and getting us close enough to board Oryx's dreadnought, shut down his superweapon, and prepare a landing zone for Guardians to invade. Which is exactly what we did, though we discovered that the stealth drive and Eris's ship weren't exactly going to make a return journey. We also realized that we weren't the only invaders, as the Cabal Skyburners had crashed one of their vessels, the Dantalian Exodus 6, into the
Damn,
Dreadnought's
this is so
hull as part
cool.
of a general boarding action and response
You
to
can see
Phobos.
inside the ship.
After we'd secured a landing zone, we had to go after Oryx, an idea that these Cabal had also had in mind. The Primus of the
This is a
Skyburners
really
was
nice
pushing
gun.
deep into the Dreadnought with his forces. Oryx put a stop to his throne-breaking ambitions by taking him, and thus the Cabal forces were mostly shattered. It was also here that we discovered the way deeper into Oryx's Dreadnought, and also that it was blocked. It could only be accessed by certain Ascendant Hive. We were at a dead end, but Eris still had a plan. We didn't need to actually be an Ascendant Hive. We just had to pass as one. In order to accomplish this, we were going to have to go back to the place where we had defeated our first great Ascendant Hive. We would need to return to the places where we had killed Crota, both in his throne world
How do we get
and
home?
on the moon. First, we would need a shard of crystal that we had destroyed
Yay,
in the Chamber
backtracking.
of Night. Upon reaching it, we had to fight off Bax, the Gravekeeper, a powerful ogre who was guarding this site. Given his failure to defend it, he was also taken when he was starting to lose his battle with us. Oryx clearly had other plans for him in mind. As we recovered this shard of crystal, Oryx unleashed his Taken in an ambush, attempting to stamp us out for
Hey,
good.
Mars.
He nearly succeeded, but thanks to our swift exit, we were unharmed. We also briefly raided one of Rasputin's bunkers to recover another copy of the stealth technology that
Oh my
Cade had
God.
used, this
Poor
time from an
Rasputin.
actual underground part of Rasputin's network. This was all being done for the next part of our infiltration. Crota's throne world was heavily guarded now, and a death ceremony was being hosted to send Crota's soul onto the next realm. From there, we would need to infiltrate the ceremony and steal some of Crota's essence, indwelling it within the crystal. Oryx's two daughters were present. Oranuk and Urhalak were praying at the side of their brother's tomb, and when we started to steal the brother's essence, the two reacted violently. The transgression of our light here was quite the insult. We would have been snuffed out, but thankfully Eris Morn was able to help us escape using some of the Hive's own magic to pull us out. We now had all we needed to confront Oryx, and so we returned to the Dreadnought and passed through into the sacred space where the altar of Oryx could be found.
Okay.
There, we would find the Taken Primus and Bax the Gravekeeper once again. They would be our final test before we faced Oryx himself. Before Oryx's altar, we found the Taken King, and in this place of darkness, we would fight and match our light to his shadow. It would have been a hard-fought battle, but regardless
that is a
of
cool
Oryx's
visual.
millennia of conquest,
That is a beautiful
our light
visual.
was stronger. In the moment of his defeat, he channeled his power and took himself, cheating his death and allowing him to pass back into the deepest parts of his throne world. All that remained of the Taken King was his sword, Willbreaker. From this sword, Eris took a shard and gave it to us. It would take time and guidance from Lord Shax, as well as a large amount of a purified Hadium alloy from the Dreadnought, but eventually the shard of Willbreaker was purified and would be infused with our light, allowing us to wield our own mighty blade. In the final moments of its creation, we would need to destroy Ekthar, the Blade of Oryx. This symbolic conquest reforged Oryx's old blade from a thing of darkness into a thing of light. Armed with this new tool, we would prepare to conquer the rest of the Dreadnought. We defeated a potential successor to Oryx, a dark blade known as Alakul, in the Hanging Crypts. We prevented the Agonarch Coven from raising a great Taken abomination and unleashing it upon the system. We prevented a pair of Bond brothers from destroying the Dreadnought's core and half the system along with it. And we set our sights on Oryx's court. In this place we would destroy many of his ascendants, preventing them from tithing their strength to their king, weakening him further. Because make no mistake, Oryx was still alive.
This is beautiful.
In his throne world he lived on, and was more powerful still there than he had been in the physical world. Before we entered that throne world, we would need to crush the Taken remnants out in the system. The Taken War was not yet won. We had to dislodge covens of Taken gathering on Earth before they could root deep within our home. We returned to the Vault of Glass, where the Taken infestation had forced the Vex into an unusual position. They had to return Praedith to our timeline momentarily, so that he might guide us in and defeat the Taken infestation. On Mars, the Taken were at risk of overrunning the now surfaced Black Garden, which had momentarily been dimensionally
Why is it
locked
back?
to Mars's surface, after our destruction of the Black Garden's heart. Finally, we returned to the first place where we
it was just a
encountered the
visual.
Taken, and on Phobos we fought them there as well. They were strongest here, but we carved away the infection before it could truly threaten Sol any further. With his minions scattered and his armies in chaos, Oryx was left weakened. All we had left to do was to dethrone the king himself. We assembled a fire team and struck out into the heart of the Dreadnought. Oryx was our target, but by passing into the Dreadnought's heart, we would also need to face Oryx's remaining retainers. The king's war priest was engaged in ritual combat, and by killing this millennia-old destroyer, we were able to gain further ingress. But we took an unexpected forward path. Venturing through a portal summoned after the war priest's defeat, we found ourselves in Golgoroth's cellar, where Oryx kept drafts of slowly corrupting light for consumption, like fine vintages or artworks painted in suffering. Here we found and defeated Golgoroth, an ogre corrupted with the power of the Hive and the Worm Gods, an ogre who had been created to tithe violence to Oryx, to corrupt the light within the cellar, and to contain one of the tablets of ruin within its flesh. After
The heck is a
defeating this
tablet of
monster,
ruin?
we would progress further, and eventually we ascended to the final overlook. Here we slew Oryx's two daughters, the Death Singers Ur-Halak and Ur-Anuk. There was no alternative for the Taken King but to face us. He would destroy us by the right of the sword, or he would die trying. His power was all but certain here. Titanic in form, Oryx attempted to crush us with all the might at his disposal. But by using the corrupted light and detonating it, we were able to burn away Oryx's darkness and send the Taken King screaming back into the void.
Nice.
As his final scream rang
This
out
is
across
huge.
the stars, yet again, just as had been the case with his son, a terrible silence fell over the Ascendant Plane. It fell over the whole Dreadnought, the whole of the system. And this time, nothing would answer. All of creation could breathe a sigh of relief, for we had defeated Oryx the Taken King. Unknowingly, we had set further events in motion with this. We had sent signals to the rest of the Hive Pantheon and the rest of the Hive Swarms. The king was now dead. The light had triumphed. Oryx's sisters and the great subjugator Rolk, the first disciple of the Witness, would
Haven't heard
take
that name in a
notice of our
while.
actions, though we would not see their plans unfold for many years. With the death of the Taken King, we also had the chance to recover 3 strange artifacts: the Blade of Famine from the War Priest, the Shroud of Uranuk from the Daughter of Oryx, and the Taken King's own ravenous heart. Alongside these, our investigations in the Dreadnought had allowed us to recover the calcified fragments. When the over 50 of them were fully assembled, these fragments gave us the knowledge of the first 5 books of sorrow, and led us on the path to the weapon that Oryx had conceived of long ago. With his ravenous heart, his daughter's shroud, and his war priest's blade, Eris Morn forged a weapon unlike any other. The remnants of Oryx's soul and purpose made manifest. The touch of malice. With this powerful weapon in hand, Guardians had begun to feel somewhat
We
unstoppable.
started turning enemies into
There were more
guns.
troubling events still unfolding. Having lost all their commanders, the remaining Cabal aboard the Dantalian Exodus 6 were sending out a distress signal. We rushed to the heart of the carrier's command deck to try and stop them, but it was already too late. The message had been sent out into deep space, and it was requesting reinforcements. The message receiver at the time being was unknown to us, but we did know that it had been sent to the ruler of the Cabal Empire. That ruler would be Dominus Gaul, the one who would arrive soon and change the system forever. But it would take a full year for him to marshal his forces and reach Sol, and before he did arrive, Guardians would have to face a new threat from an old enemy. The House of Devils were on the march, and this time they had discovered a weapon that would change the fates of the system forever.
Ooh, red. Falling. Rise of Iron.
Approximately a year after the defeat of the Taken King, Lord Saladin summoned us to the Cosmodrome, in particular to an old snow-covered mountain with an abandoned fortress at its summit. Little did we know that this would be some of the holiest and most storied ground Guardians could set foot upon. We strode out onto the mountain and for the first time entered Fellwinter Peak. The mountain was being raided by the House of Devils, and whilst Saladin was still trying to find out why, we were able to fend off the invaders. But we did discover something strange. It was Sepix Prime, the same servitor that we had destroyed 2 years ago. But this time it was different. It was changed, covered in a strange red and black mechanical growth, like a plague of machines, like infections, like tumors, and somehow, any damage we were doing to Sepix, it would regenerate. Upon reporting this to Saladin, he exclaimed with shock and demanded that we destroy the construct with all haste. Sepix escaped in the end, and as we secured the Iron Temple with Saladin, the Hunter Shiro IV, and the Cryptarch Tyra Khan, Our next objective would be to pursue Sepix, who had retreated into a previously sealed-off section of the Cosmodrome. As we pursued the servitor, we saw the source of its infection. Siva, the nanite technology that Rasputin had used to kill the Iron Lords all those years ago. The House of Devils had found it, and their splicers had weaponized it, turning many of their soldiers into cyborgs. In the view of the Fallen, to become a machine is to become a god, and so with Siva, the Devil Splicers had discovered a source of divinity itself, a means by which apotheosis could be achieved. It also made them far deadlier than they already were. Pushing deeper into the Plague Lands, we discovered that the Devils had used Siva in all sorts of ways, not only modifying themselves, but also their forces, and any of the Cosmodrome's old defenses that were still inactive, which could be repaired using Siva. These guns were powerful enough to threaten the city, and so while they were active, incoming reinforcements could not be dispatched. We had to destroy them immediately. Whilst we succeeded in this task, it was starting to become clear that the Devils were a far deadlier threat than we had initially realized, and their grasp of Siva was starting to accelerate. Saladin would bring us back to the temple and would tell us of the Iron Lord's history with Siva. This exchange revealed to us that the House of Devils had control of Siva in a rudimentary sense, but they did not fully have mastery over the nanites for the moment. With that in mind, we tracked down the original source of Siva thanks to the assistance of the Cryptarch Tyra Khan, and returned to the Golden Age labs of Clovis Bray in Freehold on Mars. After confirming that it was there on Mars that the Devils had learned how to control Siva, we would be able to discover a weakness in the mechanism used by the Devils to control the nanites. Returning to the Plague Lands, we had our objectives. Shiro had devised a means of temporarily halting the Devils' control over Siva and shutting down their defenses for a few minutes. After we had sabotaged their systems, we would descend beneath the main base of the Elixni. The Splicers had built up an area into a massive fortress, and Siva's destabilization had caused it to start detonating.
These are really cool visual effects.
Regardless of the danger, the
The
Splicers were
veins
undeterred,
of
and so we
nanites.
descended past the Archon's Forge, deep into Site 6, where the Iron Lords had met their end. This was the Siva replication complex, and we had to destroy it for good this time. But in the deepest reaches of this place, there was a faint echo of light. Falling from the infestation, we saw what had become of the Iron Lords, as the infested and bloated remains of Felwinter, Gelion, and Yolda rose to fight against us. Their light was entangled with Siva nanites, which now returned to the purpose Rasputin had given them so long ago: replicate, eliminate, immunize. We battled with the remnants of the Iron Lords and destroyed the Siva nanites that infested
These zombies.
them, freeing their light and finally laying them to rest. Before we left, we recovered Yolda's helmet and set Site 6 to self-destruct. It isn't known if all the Siva within the complex was truly destroyed. Inert Siva may still be lying around the Cosmodrome to this day, but for the moment, the Devils were unable to make more of their own nanites to control. They would only have the stocks that they had made thus far. We returned Yolda's helmet to Saladin, who felt a weight of so many years lifted from his shoulders.
Hey, hypes.
His friends had finally
We're
been
watching
set to
along.
rest. He proclaimed us to be the Young Wolf, the first of a new age of Iron
Young
Lords,
Wolf.
and gifted us with a blade to represent our new title and station. We would go out into the Plague Lands and start to rid them of the infestation of the Splicers. We destroyed the rejuvenated version of Sepix Prime and ended a Splicer priest called Kovic before he could merge Siva with an entire brood of Hive. We reignited Radagast's original purpose by using Siva and the armor of the Iron Lords to create the tools of a better tomorrow. Namely, we used them to forge anew a more powerful iteration of the infamous Yalahorn.
Hello, guys.
The hold of the House of Devils Splicers was weakening, but Shiro 4 picked up something distressing. An intercepted transmission from the House of Devils indicated that there was a secondary complex where the Devils had been storing the Siva nanites that they had gathered. From within, the leader of the Splicers was calling out to all other Fallen, encouraging them to gather in the so-called
The title of
Perfection
Young Wolf was
Complex,
never used again.
where they could be
I
freed
see.
from their mortal bonds. With this message and the large build-up of the industrial base in the Plaguelands that the Elixni had been working so hard to create, it was clear that soon the Fallen would build up enough strength to threaten the lost city again. This was something the city was unlikely to survive. With the power of Siva, the Fallen had something they could potentially use to strike back at the lesser Guardians, and there were not enough legends within the tower to hold back an assault of this strength. So Shiro, seeing this plot unfold before him, ordered us to kill it in its crib. We engaged in a coordinated raid on the facility and a preemptive strike. We would take out the Splicers' leadership before they could gather enough strength to actually threaten the city. We quickly infiltrated
This guy's not
the
doing
facility
anything.
and discovered the Splicers'
He's just going back and
second in
forth.
command, Vosik. His
Finally.
command over the Siva was powerful, but rogue Siva nanites had started to persist within the swarms, and the Guardians would weaponize these nanites, turning them on their masters, bringing Vosik down. We ascended through the old Russian wall next, and discovered a way to its summit. There we saw proof of the Fallen's intent and ambition. A powerful prototype siege engine, powered by nuclear components. Such a mighty device would have been powerful enough to break down the walls of the lost city, and so we had to see to its destruction. After overcharging it,
Jesus
we saw to its
Christ.
doom by sending it tumbling down off the incomplete section of the Cosmodrome's walls, where it crashed into the seas below.
That would have
As
caused
we
an
approached
earthquake.
the Perfection Complex, the Siva infestation was getting stronger, but the ragged Fallen kit bashing had started to give way. Smooth, angular nanite construction now filled these halls.
Oh.
The seat of the power of these Fallen Splicers was near. As we descended into the darkness of the Perfection Complex, we faced Axis, the Archon Prime. He had not just combined himself with the machines, he had ascended into one, leaving behind his biological self and truly achieving the Elixni's version of godhood.
Wow.
This pretender was no match for the light of Guardians, and there was little that could be done to stop us, even with the command of the Siva itself. We brought down Axis, and after thoroughly scouting
That's
the
such a
Perfection
badass
Complex,
fight.
we recovered another
Ooh,
relic of Siva,
that looks
which could be
beautiful.
reconstituted into a weapon that used the nanites as ammunition. We would call it Outbreak Prime, and whilst
That
it
looks
was
so cool.
eventually contained by the Cryptarchy, for a brief time we used it to sow chaos amongst the ranks of the Splicers. With our victory over Axis and all other threats seemingly gone from the system, there was a brief period of peace. It was declared to be an age of triumph. It was declared to be a time for humanity to celebrate their guardians and the successes that they had accomplished. But beneath this age of triumph, signs of what was to come could be seen. It started with the Fallen. They had begun doing something unheard of. They had begun shredding their banners and fleeing into the deeper wilds. The state of existence within which the city had lived, known as the 100-Year Siege, would come to a brief end. There weren't enough Elixni assaulting the various walls for it to be considered a siege anymore. And the Cabal scout legions began marshalling for reinforcements that we should have been preparing for ourselves. Our age of triumph was short-lived, and would be brought crashing down by the arrival of a foe unlike any other. He understood
Hello,
our
Monte.
power, and he would seek to deprive us of it, so that we would be left defenseless. The Red Legion was coming. The call of the Dantalian Exodus 6 had been answered.
What is
And at the
this?
head of the invasion fleet stood the principal instigator of the Midnight Coup, ruler of the Cabal Empire, and the first ever Dominus.
Dominus.
Soon, we would face Gaul, and he would not have mercy for our light.
Oh, the Red War!
There were some warning signs of Gaul's approach, but we were
Wait,
blind to them.
This is Destiny 2?
And so the Red War
Hey, it's
began
Destiny
with
2.
a swift,
Here we
all-out assault on
go!
the last city. The walls that had held back the Fallen for 100 years were shattered in mere moments. The Cabal fleet left the tower in ruin and rained drop pods on our home from above. At the head of their fleet, a massive looming vessel began to unfold
We lose the
and made its
city.
way toward the Traveler. Unfurling into a truly massive structure, we would not know its purpose at the time, but all too soon we would see that it would spell our doom. We returned to the tower from the wilds after coming back from a patrol and saw the devastation firsthand. Our
This
vaults were destroyed,
devastation.
our home was
It
crippled,
was not
and
my
in the opening
intention.
moments of the war, the Cabal had captured the Speaker. After pushing through the tower, we rendezvoused with the Vanguard and Amanda Holiday, who shepherded us up to the Cabal command carrier.
I played
We were
I
able
played
to
the Red
disable it
War.
briefly, but as
That's
we
it.
fled to the top deck, we saw that
Well,
we
I
were
played
too
some of
late.
Destiny 1. Hello,
The
Quizal.
vessel had attached to the side of the Traveler, and as we
I
wondered
played
at
the
its
Red War and
purpose,
then it was gone.
we saw him, Dominus Gaul, the Ghost Primus of the Red Legion. He told us to behold our future, and the cage activated. We were cut off from our light. Our ghost fell to our side, motionless. Our powers were gone. Gaul proclaimed our weakness and our unworthiness before kicking us from his command ship. Our drained ghost fell with us down into the ruins of the last city that we had failed to protect.
Damn,
We
that
fell
was
into
such a
unconsciousness,
it's such a
and all
fast
seemed lost.
destruction of the city.
But out of the darkness, a faint light flickered. We saw a vision of a silver hawk in flight. We saw visions of new weapons, of light, and
New weapons.
challenges that we might face. The vision ended with a view of a shard of the Traveler in a place we had never been to. A place we would know one day as the European Dead Zone.
The forest.
And then we awoke, lightless. We struggled to our feet. We were in the ruins of a
The
city
fact
canal.
that there is like the
Thus
no
far, we had been
respawn
able to
button
evade the
there
Cabal.
is good.
We found our ghost, and we had to choose the only option that was available to us. We could not face the Cabal in this state, and so we fled. For weeks, we trekked across mountains and through valleys. We passed the bodies of our fallen comrades, and eventually, we saw a familiar sight. A hawk, just like the ones from the visions. We followed it, through mountains and passes,
Oh, I wish I could play
until
this.
at last, we collapsed from
Bungie.
exhaustion. When we next awoke, a woman was bringing us to our feet. The hawk was hers.
Oh,
Her name
that's
was
cool.
Soraya
Excellent.
Hawthorne, and she lived out here in the wilds. She escorted us to a safe haven in the dead zone called the Farm, and there we reunited with another familiar face, Tyra Khan. She instructed us to follow our vision with caution, as the area around the Shard of the Traveler had been converted into a dark forest by the wayward light of the Shard. Following our only hope, we pushed through fallen marauders and held close to our ghost. As we reached the luminous Shard, our ghost felt the Traveler's presence once more, and was filled with light. In a cascading array of returning power, we felt our strength build once more. We were not empowered in the same way as we had been, but once again we were blessed with immortality, and we could wield the light as a weapon once more.
Ah,
Our newfound powers
so
would
cool.
represent a turning point in the Red War. We were the only Guardian in existence to have recovered our light, but we had to make the most of it. We were the last trick up the sleeve of all the Guardians in the lost city, and so we needed to get to work. After clearing up Hawthorne's communications, we picked up a transmission from Zavala, commanding all remaining Guardian forces to rally on Titan. When we ventured there, we found the remnants of the tower's military in disarray. The arcologies were infested with Hive, and we would have to secure the platforms before we could properly reunite with Zavala. After doing so, we would be able to take our first steps against the Cabal. The forces on Titan had intercepted a multitude of Red Legion transmissions. Using one of the Golden Age CPU cores from within the arcology, we would be able to decode those transmissions and discern the best way to strike back. It was also there that we discovered one of the deepest recesses in the lower depths
I
of the
remember
arcology,
this.
just as we acquired the CPU core. We stopped and saw a giant looming shadow just outside of the observation deck. There was something magnificently large in Titan's oceans, a leviathan the likes of which we had never seen. This was technically the first time we had seen Asa, the proto-hive worm god that had escaped the Witness and Fundament. Though we didn't know it at the time, we were beholding one of the greatest signs of hope that we would ever lay our eyes upon. We didn't have time to marvel at her passing, though. We had to escape with the core.
We didn't even have time to marvel at what we didn't have time to marvel at.
Left little good news. Along with the cage, the Red Legion had brought another massive construct with their fleet, a space station known as the Almighty. This station was capable of devouring planets, but it did so for an even more destructive purpose. Using its core weapon system, the Almighty could be used to cause a star to prematurely go supernova. Even if the Cabal lost, they could destroy all of Sol and wipe humanity from the face of existence. Even with this dire news, Zavala's resolve wasn't broken. He sought to reunite his fire team and to take back the lost city no matter the cost. So our next objective was clear. We had to go and find the other fire team members of the Vanguard, which meant going after Cade 6. Fortuitously, with the CPU in hand, we were able to intercept various other signals from around the system. And one of them would be a signal from Cade's ghost Sundance.
Oh, help me, man.
That signal drew us to a planetoid called Nessus. Here we discovered that Cade had been tangled in some Vex technology that he didn't completely understand. There was also a colony ship that had crashed here.
Cade's so cool.
One of the Exodus program vessels from so long ago. Its crew were all dead.
I remember this. The not Rasputin.
We were able to save
It was like asking you to do
and
stuff.
We discovered that the technology he was attempting to lift from the Vex was a teleporter. Short range, but still capable of being used within the Lost City to get close enough to assassinate Dominus Gaul. That was Cade's plan, at least. But to execute it, we'd need to be able to truly reunite the Vanguard, and Cade would not be doing this alone. So we had to go and find Ikora. Cade told us that she almost certainly made her way out to Io, a sacred place for warlocks, as it was the last place the Traveler had touched before the collapse began. When we met Ikora, we also found the Red Legion, and we quickly discerned their purpose. At the cradle where the Traveler had set down, they were trying to drain the light from Io, light which bloomed from the planet's core in a latent fashion in the wake of the Traveler. The Red Legion were draining all of it. We had to prevent the Red Legion's sacrilege, and in the process we also discerned their plans. They weren't just draining the light so that they could prevent us from having it. They were trying to take the light for themselves. The taken population on Io also converged on the Red Legion's experiments. Amongst their number, observing the Cabal and the Guardians alike, were a few envoys of yet another dark figure in the background. Savathun, the Witch Queen, showed her hand for the first time on Io. Her forces marshaled and kept a watchful eye on us as we did what our work demanded, though we wouldn't know the Witch Queen's purpose until far later. Suffice to say, her observations of the Cabal and the Guardians fighting over light now make a lot more sense. Ikora was starting to formulate a plan, even though she had only been back with our fire team for a brief amount of time. We realized that in order to discover more about the Almighty, we would need to leverage one of the oldest assets in the system, a Warmind bunker that was still active on Io. We would be able to use its systems to scan the Almighty for a weakness. From here, we determined that we couldn't simply destroy the Almighty, as it would take the sun with it. Instead, we would need to board the station and sabotage its main weapon. With this knowledge in hand, we reunited the members of the Vanguard at the farm, back in the EDZ. The plan would be to engage the Red Legion in a two-pronged assault. The Vanguard would engage in the initial attack on the last city, and would focus on getting the Vex teleporter as close to Gaul as possible. When we had disabled the Almighty, we would rendezvous with them and use the teleporter to get close enough to Gaul to assassinate him ourselves. It was a risky plan, but it was our only realistic hope. But in order to board the Almighty, we would need to commandeer a command vessel from the Cabal, and there was only realistically one option. We needed to steal the personal shuttle of one of Gaul's chosen, a warrior known as Thumos the Unbroken. We dislodged him from his personal command carrier, the Oribas Vectura in the EDZ, and proved that his name was in fact not well earned.
Nice.
Just as quickly, the plan had to be initiated.
Well, he was unbroken up to that point.
Thumos' ship and boarded the Almighty. It was already in the process of charging, and was consuming the planet of Mercury for fuel. We fought our way to its core, disabled it, and allowed the assault on the last city to begin. But all this time, as we had been gathering our allies, and as we had been fleeing to find our light once more, Gaul had also been planning. His capture of the Speaker, our leader, at the beginning of the war, meant that he had an extensive amount of time to interrogate him about the nature of the light. Gaul made his desire clear to be chosen by the Traveler, and even though the Speaker had pushed back against him, his resolve was starting to break. The Consul, the other member of the Midnight Coup who had led the overthrow of Emperor Callus, had also been with the Red Legion, and was counseling Gaul, stating that he did not need to be chosen by the Traveler, that he instead could do as the legendary Acreus had done, and simply claim the light by force. This disagreement, as well as the Speaker's admission that the Traveler wasn't explicitly communicating with him, would lead to a moment of utter rage. The Consul would leave the Speaker dead, and in response to him being called
this is how the Speaker
Gaul
dies.
would kill the Consul, proclaiming that he would indeed take the light for himself, no matter the cost or impediment. As we returned to our home, the city's sky was ablaze with gunfire, and the Vanguard were under pressure. By the time we reached them across the city rooftops, they were all but spent. We used
I remember
the Vex teleporter that Cade had painstakingly
fist
set
fight
up,
him,
and
right?
went forth to face
one-on-one?
Gaul. We found him aboard his command ship,
Oh,
before
here.
the cage of the Traveler itself.
This
As
is where
we
you 1v1
approached,
him.
An inferno of dark, twisted light was ahead of us, and light had been siphoned into containers all along the command deck of the ship. Something terrible had happened. In front of the cage of the Traveler itself, we fought with Dominus Gaul, and realized that Gaul had indeed harnessed the light and infused himself with it, temporarily but painfully gaining a twisted measure of the light's own power. We faced a paracausal threat that day. We fought Gaul as an equal. He was one of the most powerful Cabal to ever exist, a raiser of 1,000 worlds and an annihilator of suns before he had even claimed the light. But now he had our own powers. Now he too had become legend. In a battle of light against light, we proved the superior force. We struck down the Dominus in spite of his rage and his belief that the light should be his to wield.
How do you kill him?
But as his
Because like
body
he's
fell,
so much light.
and Gaul momentarily manifested in a godlike, towering form, a luminous being, standing before the Traveler almost the same size as it. He addressed the Traveler, believing that he had indeed become a god. But he was mistaken. As he proclaimed the dawning of a new age, something awoke within the traveler. Power, boundless and pure. Whether through our actions or as a response to a divine challenge, the traveler had awoken. It was alive once more. It shattered the bonds of its cage, casting off its shackles.
That is so
And it
cool.
immolated the false god that stood before it. In a blinding explosion of light that destroyed the foundations of the cage itself, light erupted from the traveler. It shattered the cage,
Hello,
freeing
Tom.
itself and proclaiming its return, triumphant as humanity's protector. The light that emerged from the traveler would spread across the whole of the cosmos, starting at Earth, and then spreading out over the planets of our solar system and beyond.
I can fix
The light
him.
poured across the universe, as far as it could reach. The results of this moment would take time to emerge. Many worlds in Sol would be changed. Many great beings would react to this moment where the traveler had returned. But worst of all, in the darkness out between
Yeah, it's a
the
sign.
galaxies,
Well, come over here,
something else
darkness.
had begun to stir
Come over here,
the
witness.
reaction of the traveler's reawakening. A presence once lost to time, banished from Sol at the end of the collapse,
Triangle's bad.
was returning.
The evil
The Black
triangle.
Fleet perceived the light. The witness, who had so long ago been cast out, began the long, slow march towards Sol. The traveler was reawakened, and now it would be able to have its final shape once more. No matter the cost, it would achieve its ultimate goal for the universe. It was only a matter of time before the Black Fleet would return. For now, in the aftermath of the Red War, seemingly there was peace yet again. The Red Legion were cast out of the city, but there were still many remnants out there in the wilds. But at very least, the walls were secure. Our last tower may have been destroyed, but the Guardians once again were the defenders of their city, and with the Traveler's reawakening and the destruction of the cage, all the Guardians had their light back once again. But the defeat of Dominus Gaul also prompted another actor at the edge of our system to make their move at last. One day, we received a strange invitation, gilded and covered in Cabal heraldry.
Oh.
It was a letter. It was a long letter, an entire treatise, from someone known as Emperor Callus, the same deposed emperor
Oh, this guy.
who had been removed from power by his daughter, Gaul, and the consul in the Midnight Coup. He was inviting us to his Leviathan, a vessel that would soon appear above Nessus, and he planned to reward us for defeating one of the foes that had deposed him. An invitation from the former emperor had the vanguard notably concerned.
This year one?
Did the following arrival of the huge world-eating vessel itself. As it began to consume Nessus, we made an action to board the Leviathan
Nice
and
to
began
meet
to
you
fight through
guys.
the many loyalists of Callus.
The so one. Oh,
Eventually,
okay.
though, we realized this was not some grand garrison. This was more of a pleasure barge. A palace
Pleasure
built in
barge.
opulence for the purpose of entertainment. Eventually, we would make our way through all of Callus's games.
You didn't
and
change
found
at
ourselves in
all.
a throne room. There, we did battle with the Emperor of the Cabal, or at least, we at first thought we did. The more we battled with this Emperor, the more he started to break down, until it was eventually very clear that we weren't facing a real Cabal Emperor, but instead a robotic double of himself, a facsimile designed to render his true self protected. As we struck down the construct, it told us to take the riches we had earned and to grow fat from strength.
Oh.
He also told us of an impending cataclysm that loomed ahead of us.
I never
Black
played
Age,
this.
that he had seen at the forefront of the universe's leading.
You know what? I
void,
feel like I
which we
played
should
the
all
entire
prepare
Red
for.
War by myself. I don't think I
We had little
ever
time
did
to think
any
on Callus's words, but they would be
multiplayer stuff.
representative of the doom that was approaching us in the form of the Black Fleet. But before we could even begin to prepare for them, the wave of light sent out by the Traveler
I
was
don't remember
awakening
any
terrible
allies.
gods and ancient constructs across the system. All of Sol was about to change forever, and it would start with the return of an old mentor to Ikora Ray, a fabled warlock lost deep within the infinite
They already own
forest
Bungie, dude.
on Mercury.
What else are they gonna do? Alright, before we start the Curse of Osiris, I would like to say hello. Nice to meet you guys. I'm Horori. I mainly do JRPGs and shooters. If you were curious about my games, and other than gaming, I do a lot of talking. So nice to meet you. Let's get on with the show. Hello. Nice to meet you. Return of an Exile.
It had been barely a few months since the return of the Traveler, and already the system had gone through a vast series of changes. But unseen to us on Mercury, Osiris and his ghost Sagira were also experiencing strange happenings. In part, they saw how it was affecting the Vex and our futures should they be the ones to build them. One day, as they explored the simulations
build
of the
the
Infinite
Vex?
Forest, Osiris saw into a future that filled him with dread. A future where the Vex had finally won. This was when Osiris also was confronted by something else. Panoptes, the Vex mind responsible for discovering and creating the simulation where the Vex were victorious. In a moment of desperation, Osiris flung Sagira through a portal out of the Infinite Forest. She was damaged by stray goblin slap rifle fire.
Oh
But her
Jesus!
shell would be discovered by the Vanguard and was returned to the last city. Ikora ordered us to make contact with the Osirian cult on Mercury and to attempt to explore the newly active gateway into the Infinite
Did they
Forest.
repair the ghost?
We failed to enter it at first and saw many strange Vex from the future and past showing up, indicating a huge influx of active units in the area. The Assyrian cultist Brother Vance would make a recommendation to us after we had saved him and those who resided in the lighthouse. He knew that we would need to make contact with Osiris and that saving his ghost was probably one of the best ways to find out where he was. Some of the other cultists in the EDZ had the equipment required to reactivate Sagira. It was our only lead at the time, so we followed it. The cultists were unfortunately dead, but we did find the equipment needed for Sagira to temporarily indwell within our own ghost's shell and help us enter the Infinite Forest. It was there that we first met Osiris, or rather, his echoes. These were effectively perfect copies of Osiris, made in a strange shimmer of light. He had always been able to summon them, a strange quirk of his own paracausal abilities, based in an unknown teaching that only he seems to have mastered.
I didn't know Osiris was that
These
cool.
echoes led us through the forest and
beautiful.
showed us how Mercury was corrupted by the Vex back at the turn of the Golden Age, before leading us to the dark future where the Vex were victorious. Here, we saw Panoptes for the first time and had to quickly escape its grasp, which would be capable of superseding our light within the simulations of the Infinite Forest. Leaving the forest, it was clear that we needed to destroy this construct. Over our investigations, we learned that that would require us to locate a map of the Infinite Forest and to discover the original moment where Panoptes had been created within its simulations. With this information in hand, we would be able to track the Vex mind through the many pathways of the forest. We fought through Red Legion invaders, stuck in a time loop, various Vex constructs, and a variety of other strange hazards, all to acquire this information. But eventually we found what we were looking for. As we discovered the exact temporal coordinates for Panoptes, it showed up right in front of us and abducted
Oh, okay.
Segura's essence from our ghost's own shell. We were promptly ejected from the Infinite Forest and could only return later with the aid of Ikora Rei, who used her remarkable power to smash through the gateway's defenses and allow us ingress. We
Cool.
quickly converged on the coordinates
Don't look
that we
at
had
Ikora, just get
discovered,
in there.
along with Osiris's echoes and Osiris himself. Panoptes was destroyed by our combined might, and Segura
Alright.
was released. The threat of Vex supremacy had been cut short. After reuniting with his ghost and his student, Osiris sought to return to the Infinite Forest with the aim of defending us against the Vex, and further searching for Saint 14. We would return to the lighthouse and made use of its infinite forge to craft several implements of war. None were more curious than the perfect paradox. The discovery of this weapon was linked to a signal within the Infinite Forest that matched the signature of Saint 14's light.
Huh.
Converging on that point, we discovered that it was indeed his light, but he was nowhere to be found. As it turned out, the Vex had created a singular mind over countless thousands of simulations that was designed specifically to drain his light. We would follow the path of Saint, and discovered what seemed to be a memorial to the great Titan. He had slain thousands of Vex in his explorations of the forest, and they had expended significant resources to defeat him. On his body, we discovered the broken remnants of this shotgun. We reforged it in the lighthouse's infinite forge,
Huh?
but it led us to a moment where something
made him into a
seemingly
gun?
impossible happened.
Lottie.
Remarkably, Saint 14 had left a message for us
There's
with
no
this
way.
weapon,
What?
stating that he remembered the moment when we gave it to him. We had only ever been raised as a guardian within the last half of a decade.
We
Saint
found his
14 received this weapon in the early City Age or late Dark Age, perhaps. Regardless, we weren't alive for that moment, so it seemed impossible that we would have been able to give him this weapon. Regardless, we held on to this weapon, understanding that not only was it one of the finer crafted shotguns that we had received at the time, but
I'm
also
doing alright.
that with time travel and the Vex, certain possibilities may arise even if they are technically impossible. This perfect paradox might yet come to pass. We might yet live to see ourselves present Saint 14 with this shotgun. We all mourned the loss of this great
I thought we
hero.
turned Saint 14
would
into
not
a
have
gun.
long
I
to do
would
so.
have been kind of pissed.
Soon we would need to descend upon Mars and face a rising new threat. The Traveler's Light had awakened slumbering gods and begun to thaw the ice around Hellas Basin.
Thor the ice.
Soon
Alright.
Mars would become a battleground of old machines and ancient shadows once more.
Servitor. That is not a servitor. That is,
What happened next began with an unusual amount of warsats falling in Hellas Basin. Mars was known to be the home to many of the Warmind's systems, but this activity was unusually focused. The Red Legion's propensity to scavenge such valuable technology meant that we quickly had to investigate the region. We were greeted with a transmission from another resurfacing legend, Anastasia Bray, the long-lost guardian
Anastasia
and
Bray.
infamous hunter of Twilight Gap. She had converged on this location in her quest for the core of the Warmind Rasputin. Whilst we'd interfaced with trace segments of him before, this was his true core and the heart of his system, and she'd found it just in the nick of time. We arrived as the ice was beginning to thaw, and as
Thor.
the forces of Zol and Nokris were beginning to return from their long slumber. Commander Zavala was quick to assert himself into the picture, given that he saw the Warmind as an imminent threat to humanity if it wasn't capable of being made into an asset. Anna Bray wasn't so convinced and believed that Rasputin could be an ally of his own volition, something that Rasputin quickly pounced upon the opportunity to prove by deploying weapons for us to use against the Hive, in particular, a javelin filled with war-mind energy known as the Valkyrie. For the time being, Zavala was still unconvinced, and so he continued to take command, focusing his efforts on drawing out the newly rising threat on Mars, the worm god Zol. We would need to kill Zol, of course, and Zavala thought that we would be up to the task. After all, we had defeated the Taken King. We had killed gods of the Hive before. Surely this time it wouldn't be so different. In order to do this, we would need to lure Zol out, and so we converged on the European Dead Zone to steal a small shard of the Traveler, a source of strong light which would be enough to tempt Zol's hunger.
We used the Traveler to bait him?
But the trap would not be on our own
That's kind of
terms.
sacrilege, isn't
we
it?
would need to descend deep into the Martian tunnels in
That's
order to
kind of
lure out
nasty.
Zol. There we would face Nokris's brood for the first time.
We used the
and
Traveler
saw
to bait
firsthand
him.
the power of Hive necromancy used against us in order to summon back numerous dead Hive into the battle as it was going on. Fighting through them, we eventually reached a massive ritual chamber and faced off against Nokris for the first time. He was defeated, but he escaped his death thanks to Zol holding possession of his heart. Not unlike an ascendant plane, although not in keeping with the logic of the sword. As we placed our bait here in the center of the brood's hold, we tried to lure Zol out, and the worm did make an appearance. But even here, with all our light, the worm's power and darkness was overwhelming. Quickly, after it addressed us only for moments,
Would you still love
we
us if we were all
realized
worms?
it was going to be too strong.
No, I would
We
defeat
were
you.
buried in the snowy drifts beneath the Martian surface.
I would
Our
defeat
ghost
you with
was
the
luckily
light.
able to fish us out, but the situation was beginning to evolve in a rather dramatic fashion. Zol was now making a beeline for Rasputin, and our plan had completely fallen apart. Zavala caved, and admitted that perhaps we would need the Warmind's assistance and its Valkyrie weapons to actually defeat the Worm God, just as Anna Bray had continuously pointed out. As we closed on Rasputin's core, we overloaded some of his systems in order to overcharge the Valkyrie with yet more power. An unfortunate but necessary step for what we were about to do.
That
Despite
worm's not that
Zol's
big.
gargantuan size and his great power, with our might and the Warmind's weaponry combined, we were able
we
to
fought
overcome
bigger,
this
we fought
great
bigger.
beast and saw it destroyed in the shadow of the Warmind. In the aftermath of the battle, Rasputin made contact with us, telling us that he would be the guardian of the system of Sol and of humanity as he had once been, and that he would have no equal. In this moment, he began to launch an entirely new series of warsats into the system and expanded his reach and sight to all new avenues and all new heights. Our further explorations of Mars would lead us to rediscover some of the Icalos weapon project, and in particular, updated designs for the sleeper simulant that Rasputin had initially created for Guardians during the Taken War against Oryx. We also found our first hints as to the true identity of the Exo Stranger.
Oh man, I forgot about the
After
Exo
decoding
Stranger.
several messages and sigils left behind, we discovered that the Exo Stranger was likely to be none other than Anna Bray's own sister, Elsie. Elsie's final message was simply asking us to watch over Anna and to ask us to be ready, knowing that soon we would meet again. There was also one mysterious circumstance, whispers on Io that drew us to the lost oasis. Beneath, in dark catacombs, we would hear the words of Zol again, even though he had perished at our hands. And from these whispers a challenge was rendered. Down here in the dark, upon completing this challenge and proving our might within the Hive's own logic, we would discover the whisper of the worm, the last remnants of Zol's hungry soul, cleft into a weapon and made manifest in our hands. Zol would bind himself to the logic of the sword and to us so that he could not only survive, but feed greedily upon the killing blows that we dealt to our foes. And there would be many foes awaiting us in the future.
Thank you, Sword Logic.
Far greater challenges awaited us on the horizon, and it would all begin in the reef.
Show Mara solve. Did Mara solve the Forsaken Prince?
As the conflict on Mars began to die down, Cade and the Queen's Wrath, Petra Venge, had gone hunting. A new abomination had hit the reef in recent months, a writhing mass of new Elixni forces that were not quite alive. These new dead Elixni, or rather undead Elixni, were known as the Scorn. Tainted by some kind of dark ether, they could be risen again from the dead repeatedly. They were led by 8 barons, whom the
Flood.
Hunter and the Queen's Wrath would work to capture successfully over a long campaign. In the process of this, they discovered that the true leader of the Scorn was an all-too-familiar face, a traitor. Aldrin Sov, brother of the late Queen Mara.
This guy, the emo
All
looking.
of the Scorn and Aldrin were locked away in the max security wing of the Prison of Elders. As one of the barons, Thickrol the Fanatic spoke to Varix the Loyal, he made it clear that the Awoken lacked a strong leader without Mara. Varix saw this, and feared for the fate of his own people as well. But it was the words of Aldrin that may well have pushed him over the edge, and made it feel as though it was necessary for him to perform his next treacherous action. Varix made off with his own personal ether supplies, and released every prisoner within the Prison of Elders in order to cover his escape. As this happened, many terrible criminals were released, such as Aramis the Ship Stealer, Baron of the House of Devils. But of course, most crucially of all, the Scorn was set loose as well. Petra recalled Cade immediately to help her contain the prison break, and Cade invited us along for the ride.
That's a huge prison.
And thanks to Cade's assistance, we were able to truly lock down the prison once and for all. But Petra had a deeper concern. She headed down to the Supermax wing where the Barons and Aldrin were being locked away, and she found that they had all made their escape. They were leaving via the airlock on the lowest part of the Prison of Elders. Cade destroyed a part of the prison's central processing hub and rode the debris down to reach them more quickly. Unfortunately, this left him isolated and alone, and destroyed some of our ways down that we might have used to get to him more quickly. Alone, he faced off against the majority of the escaped Scorn. They were armed and ready for this moment, and whilst it was not the falling clubs and gnashing teeth of the Scorn foot soldiers that got to him, there was one amongst their number who was better armed. A Baron, Purha, the rifleman. He would take up a perch above the battlefield and waited for an ideal moment to strike. But he didn't kill Cade. He killed Cade's ghost, Sundance. Cade was left broken and beaten by his encounter with the Barons. Without the light, there was little hope. But it was Prince Aldrin who stole Cade's weapon, the Ace of Spades, and asked him if he had any last words. Moments before we could arrive at the scene, Aldrin delivered the killing blow.
That looks so horrible.
Cade 6. As we arrived, Aldrin and the Barons escaped, and Cade passed away in our arms. We would return Cade's remains to the tower, and though Zavala didn't want to commit forces to hunting Aldrin for fear of losing more friends, Ikora had a fire in her heart. So did we. We stated plainly for Zavala that he wouldn't need to commit any forces, breaking the silence that had persisted since the Black Garden's heart. For the first time, we spoke, and promised Aldrin Sov would die by our hands. But before going after Aldrin Sov, Ikora had found something that we needed to address. She had been having visions and dreams of light, potentially sent to her by the Traveler. We followed those dreams to Io, and were gifted with new understandings of our light. With these new powers in hand, it appeared that the Traveler might be preparing to arm us better for what came next. To hunt down the Barons, we would need to head to the Tangled Shore, a lawless and wayward patch of space within the reef's territory, frequented by pirates and smugglers. Petra picked up on our signal shortly after we arrived and offered us some assistance against the Barons. That assistance came in an unusual form. Elixni. Criminal
Elixni.
Elixni, but Elixni at our side nonetheless.
Cool.
This was perhaps the first time we had properly fought alongside
Oh,
allied fallen.
yeah, it's
It turned out that
cool.
these
I love the
Elixni didn't work
falling.
for Petra, but instead worked for the Spider, an Elixni crime boss who had grown frustrated that the Barons were cutting into his business on the shore, having even removed him from his previous hideout. He agreed to give us their location in exchange for us running a few errands for him on the shore. When he did give up the location of the Barons, they had had the necessary time to fortify it into a stronghold of their own, and though we carved through numerous scorn, we arrived too late. The Barons escaped, and we had to individually hunt them down before reaching Aldrin Sov. And so we went down and hunted them all. The Rider, the Mad Bomber, the Trickster, the Rifleman, the Hangman, the Mindbender, the Machinist, and eventually, as we made our way to a well-guarded Awoken watchtower, we faced down the last of them, Fikrul, the Fanatic. But while we had been hunting, Aldrin had been listening. As it turned out, his murder of Cade had not been of his own volition entirely. He had been guided to his target by a spectral vision of his lost sister Mara, who had told him to let the reef burn, and that only he could free her from some dark prison. The spectral vision guided him to the European Dead Zone, where he took a shard of the Traveler and brought it with him to the Tangled Shores watchtower. Deep within that watchtower, the one that linked to the Dreaming City, the corruption behind Aldrin's eyes was starting to grow. In that moment, the darkness within Aldrin and the shard's light were combined. They opened a gateway within the inner chamber of the watchtower, a gateway that led to the Dreaming City. The apparition of Mara thanked Aldrin and said that he had indeed been the key to freeing her. But in truth, Aldrin had unleashed a powerful Taken entity, a chimera possessed of a greater mind, somewhere off, far beyond the portal's end. It quickly consumed him, swallowing him whole just as we arrived on the scene. We had to destroy this terrible monster, and after defeating it, a broken, beaten, and no longer bewitched Aldrin was lying face first in front of us. Just as he had done to Cade, we then offered him his last words, with the Ace of Spades being held in dark offering of finality. It isn't clear to this day who killed the Forsaken Prince, but his death would create echoes across the many years of our story still to come. Petra wasn't done though. Regardless of whether we had shot Aldrin or whether she had, she insisted that the work needed to continue, and it would continue in the Dreaming City. She told us that we needed to make contact with Mara Sov, and that she could do so if we merely returned to the watchtower and stepped through the gateway that Aldrin had created. On the other side, we got our first glimpse at the Dreaming City, the Awoken's most sacred place in all existence. We met up with Petra, and after reactivating an Awoken device called the Oracle Engine, we heard the voice of Mara Sov. But unlike for poor Aldrin, this was no apparition. This time, the voice of the Queen was real, and as it turned out, Eris, Mara, and Osiris's plans had borne fruit. Back at the Battle of Saturn, the Queen knew that she would need to die, and that her death would leave Oryx exposed. But she had prepared for this moment. Much like the Hive, she had carved a throne world for herself out of the Ascendant Plane. With the assistance of her captured wish dragon, Riven, she was able to create Elicinia, a throne of her own that would allow her to persist beyond death. But unfortunately, the Dreaming City had been left vulnerable to an attack by Oryx in the opening moments of the Taken War, and so Oryx had breached through and corrupted Mara's throne world, and had even sent his agents into the Dreaming City. It was now infested not just with Scorn, but also with Taken. And worse still, Hive broods were descending upon the Awoken's most holy stronghold. But, worst of all, Riven had been taken by Oryx before we had destroyed him. She had been the one
It's a
who
lot
had
of
been
stuff
directing
to
Aldrin.
reveal.
She had been the one who had given him the visions of Mara.
Oh.
She had been the one responsible for Cade's death. Petra had put two and two together quickly enough, and Mara did as well. Aldrin might have pulled the trigger, but the real menace behind this was the manipulations of Riven of 1,000 Voices, the last known Ahamkara. The vengeance of a monarch who has lived for 1,000,000 years is something to behold, and the action which Mara undertook was swift and decisive. Without hesitation, she decreed that the Dreaming City should be opened to the Guardians, and that we should assemble a team to hunt the last Ahamkara. We were promised the bounty of the Awoken's realms yet again if we could slay Riven, and so we eagerly set out on our mission.
I didn't know
As
we could
worked
go
our
to
way
the
towards the Queen's Walk Spire,
Dreaming
we could
City.
not have known the doom that we would unleash. But as our feet touched the ground, our hearts were set on vengeance, and so perhaps it was already too late. We began our missions by freeing the Techians, Kali and Shurochi, who instructed us that they would be able to contain Riven's heart if only we killed her. They also warned against the strong desires that we brought to bear in our fight, telling us that our desires as 6 immortal Godslayers could feed a nation of Ahamkara, let alone just one. But maybe we should have listened more closely. Moving deeper into the heart of the Dreaming City, we faced challenges from powerful Taken and some of the Awoken's defenses that sealed Riven away. And when at last we reached the spire itself, we confronted Riven in her titanic form. She had been empowered with the darkness of the Taken
that's
energy,
massive.
thanks to Oryx, and her already
Holy
significant
shit.
power and strength as a dragon was nearly unmatched. Racing up and down the spire, we fought with her, the last dragon, the last Ahamkara.
They
Until
should have
at
killed the
last the killing
Ahamkara.
blow was struck.
All
There
of
was
them.
nothing more that Riven could do but grant one last wish. When we took her heart to the Techians,
Bring
they
Cade
contained
back.
it away, but Riven's sirens still spoke to us, and revealed that we had unwittingly given her the power to grant the wish of another dark entity. As immortal Godslayers, our will and desire was indeed a banquet for Riven,
What?
just as the Techians had warned. And with our wish to kill her granted, she fed gluttonously on that power. She used it to
What?
enact the whimsical wish of another being who had visited her in her time of isolation. Between the death of Oryx and our arrival in the Dreaming City, another mysterious presence had crept in. One whose name we would know in fear from this day forward. Savathun, the Witch Queen. She had
Savathun?
also made a wish of Riven of 1,000 Voices, but this time it was not one which Riven could so easily twist or so easily grant without the requisite power. Savathun's wish, the last wish Riven granted here in this moment, was that the Dreaming City should be taken.
Holy shit!
And
didn't
so,
I see?
with our power having been delivered unto Riven's hungry jaws, it was so. The Dreaming City was cursed to exist in a terrible limbo. Every 3 weeks, a cycle would continue. The curse would grow in potency week by week until it crescendoed in that 3rd and final week. And then, the cycle would begin again. Those trapped within the weft of the Dreaming City's curse are bound still to this day. They will repeat the same 3-week cycle over and over, perhaps for all eternity, until the universe has gutted out and there is nothing left but entropy. There is little that can be done to save them. None can leave, none can flee. They are trapped. They can only live out their eternal fates forevermore. Riven's final vengeance against the Awoken would not be the destruction of the Dreaming City that she had helped to build. It would not be the death of Aldrin at the hands of those looking to avenge Cade. It would instead be the cursing of the Awoken people and their most sacred place. Riven had laid a trap like this for a long time, and now, in this darkest moment, Riven's vengeance was complete. But as
Damn.
the curse cycle continued onward and the forces of the tower attempted to learn more about what exactly had caused it, there was an unexpected spark of light in this dark place. A ghost named Glint entered the Dreaming City. It had been doing what all ghosts do. It was searching for a guardian.
Aww.
His guardian.
Aww.
It found an abandoned monument on a distant cliff.
Oh,
There,
little.
under a funeral pall, a body had been laid to rest.
Who is it?
Scanning the body, Glint determined that
Here.
it was one worthy of wielding the Traveler's Light.
Ooh.
This was the one.
Who is
This
it?
was his guardian. But the man Glint raised,
What?
known as Aldrin Sov, as a guardian freshly reborn,
Ultra
this
Sov.
former Prince of the Reef had no memories of his past
It's
life,
crazy.
no recollection of the people he had killed or the pain that he had caused. He was a new person. His past life was not his to live. Soon enough he would find his former identity, his past self, and would discover the truth. But until then, he did have to choose a new name, and so he would be known as the new person that he was, no longer as Aldrin Sov, the Forsaken Prince, but as the Crow, a light bearer.
That is so good. That is so good. That is so good. That is so freaking good. No lie, no lie, no lie. That is so good. Woo, bravo, bravo, bravo. Alright, that's hold on. It's a good place. That's a good place to take a break. It's a good place to take a break. How about the stuff after this? Is it playable? Is the stuff after this mission playable? Is it playable? Like, I know all this stuff about this is gone. Before this is gone. Year 2 is gone too. Ah, so unfortunate. That is so unfortunate. There's still seasons to cover before Shadowkeep. The last version of the Dreaming City is still in the game. Okay. Okay. So guys, I will download Destiny 2 on my PlayStation, and we will play Destiny 2. But we will also watch this lore video. I will spoil everything for myself. But we will play Destiny 2. We will go through the goddamn game. And we will reach the moment of triumph. Good shit, okay? Pretty freaking good. So, if you would like to watch more of the Destiny lore, when we look at it a little bit more, maybe next week, please join the Discord. Subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. Let's go through the series together. Okay? Thank you. It's really nice to meet so many of you today. Good night for now. What's Horori, okay? Bye-bye!